the game plan to keep Indianapolis as a main player in the business of sports, why this strategy goes well beyond hosting big events. Plus, what will working in Indiana look like in 15 years? We break down what a new study shows about jobs and the workforce of the future. And the fascinating story behind the Hoosier treasure in Wabash, Indiana. Can it be saved from the wrecking ball? Inside Indiana Business is next.
From Indiana's business news leader, this is IBJ Media's Inside Indiana Business with Gary Dick. Presented by Elevate Ventures, Indiana University, and LIUNA.
Hello and welcome to Inside Indiana Business. I'm Gary Dick. The business of sports, it is big business, and perhaps no other city has leveraged sports in a more significant way than Indianapolis. From Final Fours to the Super Bowl to Olympic trials, sports has driven economic impact and quality of life and a global image for a city once known as India No Place. Now city leaders are looking ahead, coming up with a plan to keep Indiana in the game.
WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Royal Rumble right here to Indianapolis.
This week, more than 4 decades after launching an ambitious effort to become a sports capital, the Indiana Sports Corporation unveiled what's next in a 25-year strategic vision with the lofty goal of becoming the women's sports capital of the world and the global epicenter of sports.
To showcase our wonderful city and our state, and to do it through our sports strategy.
The impact of sport on Indianapolis is undeniable, to the tune of $3.3 billion in direct spending and nearly 10,000 jobs, nearly 3% of the metro economy, according to the IU Public Policy Institute. But an industry that Indy helped build is now an increasingly crowded field.
The original sports strategy, we're 40 years plus into this and we see the results now. They've been tremendous. But the world's catching up, right? You see Las Vegas, Miami, the Middle East. So if we've got to go beyond best practices in the way we've always done it, to next practices to see what's next, what's new, this is the time for us to again lead the way.
Vision 2050 is the result of more than 2 years of discussions and interviews around the state and nation about the next chapter of a sports strategy that has put Indy and Indiana on the map. It's a 5-pronged approach to continue to attract big-time events, but also create global centers for sports tech, academia, business leadership, and women's sports.
We want to be the place where students go to be educated in all things sport. Sport law, sport medicine, sport education, where tech companies come to be a hub and really the Silicon Valley of sport right here, and it's already started, where sport organizations like the NCAA say that's where we want our headquarters, because then we know events follow. So we want to continue with the events, but we want to build these pillars around it.
Events is still our keystone. It's going to be the thing that we always go after. It's the kind of the open door that gets us to all this other things. But that's really, we're going to move from this economic impact where we're always thinking about heads on beds to economic development. How do we get people to visit, but then how do we get them to stay? How do they build a business here? How do they build a family here? How do they hire employees here? How do they put all their wealth back into Indiana? We continue to grow Indiana.
What will it take to make this a winning strategy? Those who help put the vision together say feedback from around the country provides a clue.
We had stakeholders ranging from South Bend to, again, all of central Indiana to Evansville and across the country, that we interviewed over 125 organizations and entities at all levels. The NBA, college football playoffs, other governing bodies. And the findings were interesting. They all universally recognize we are a leader in hosting top-class sporting events. Where they thought we could do better is in telling our story and thumping our chest a little bit more. There's a little bit of the Hoosier humility. Lose that because you do great things, but you need to tell the world you're doing great things.
An ambitious vision indeed. And it's not just central Indiana looking to score big bucks through sports. Take South Bend, for example, where work began this week at Four Winds Field. This is a development that has helped transform that portion of South Bend. Work on a $48 million renovation of Four Winds Field. It's the home to the South Bend Cubs, the second smallest stadium in baseball's Midwest League, about to become the biggest. Updates include doubling the seating capacity, adding new buildings around the park. The goal is to have 10,000 seats at Four Winds Field by 2026. Coming up next, a report card on the state of manufacturing in Indiana, where we are, where we're going, and what it means for Hoosier jobs and workers. Popcorn ready to go, music to the ears for many of us. Indiana, one of the top 5 popcorn producing states in the country, and getting popcorn from Hoosier farm fields to the plant to the microwave, it's a big process and becoming more and more high tech, which means companies like Indiana-based Weaver Popcorn are facing challenges when it comes to hiring qualified workers. Which brings us to Workforce 2040, Pathways to Prosperity, Indianapolis-based Sagamore Institute's new comprehensive look at what working in Indiana will look like in the future. A snapshot that focuses on people, technology, and education.
We started off with this idea in mind. What is the economy we want? How do we prepare the talent we need to get there? And how do we make sure we're not leaving people behind?
Sagamore Institute President Teresa Lubbers on Workforce 2040, Pathways to Prosperity. Sagamore's look into what working in Indiana might look like in the future. The project includes a focus on the impact of technology, including artificial intelligence.
What we need to do is make sure that we're preparing people to be resilient about their lives and reskill. We need to make sure that employers, what I refer to as a noble obligation, to come alongside their people and prepare them when those jobs change. So it creates both opportunity, but a lot of anxiety too. And so I think to the degree that we are looking and really intentionally preparing for this, we can deal with some of this anxiety that's coming by showing that we are preparing for these changes. We're the most manufacturing intensive state in the nation. And so we make things here, but we're now changing the way we make things. And after a long period of globalization, where parts and were other places and we were bringing them here, I think you're seeing many companies rethinking their strategies.
One of the biggest challenges facing Indiana's workforce of the future?
There is a demographic cliff, and we will have slow to nearly no population growth moving into 2040. And of course, that has implications for the labor force. You have, on the one hand, an older population. In the family formation age, which you usually say is between like 24 and 54, you actually have a smaller population going there. So you have fewer people working.
Lubber says one of the keys to meeting the demands of what working in 2040 might look like comes down to preparing now.
And if we don't, in fact, skill and reskill people in the right ways, it could drive income disparity and social stratification even more. That's not acceptable. We have to make sure that we are preparing people early, and as those jobs change, we're reskilling them to go along with the changes in the job roles.
Sagamore Institute's Workforce 2040 publication. If you want to do a deep dive into this important report, you can go to sagamoreinstitute.org. Still ahead.
The ceiling and this all looks pretty darn good to me.
For as old as it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Saving in Indiana, Jim will have that story, plus business news from around Indiana. And the media's annual healthcare benefits power breakfast just around the corner, marks September 25th. On your calendar to get insight into the new IU Health Campus project. Learn more and RSVP by September 18th at ibj.com/events.
Here's what's making news around Indiana. Brought to you by the Indiana Association of Realtors. Indiana's 21,000 realtors. The neighbors you know, the experts you can count on.
And we begin with a big announcement from Eli Lilly and Company, almost 3,600 miles across the pond in Ireland. Lilly planning to spend nearly $2 billion on 2 of its manufacturing facilities in Ireland to boost production of medicines for Alzheimer's, diabetes, and obesity. Lilly's Limerick site will focus on Alzheimer's drugs, while the company's operations in Kinsale will be geared toward meeting Lilly's big demand for diabetes and obesity treatments. Lilly has operated in Ireland for more than 45 years and has more than 3,000 workers there.
Play where your star shines brightest.
An old school ad from one of Indiana's first casinos built in Rising Sun in southeast Indiana. Now it looks like the casino may be making a play for another part of the state. Multiple reports pointing to Rising Star Casino Resort looking at transferring its gaming license to New Haven, which is on the near east side of Fort Wayne. No word yet on a timeline for this potential move. Purdue University reaffirming its footprint as a leader in tech aviation. The Purdue Airport celebrating the opening of the Smart Operations Center. Researchers are working to develop the nation's first smart air corridor where uncrewed aerial vehicles can bring cargo, medicines, and even people from the West Lafayette campus to other locations.
We do have a physical object, the airhead here, to do research that helps us to not just, simulate things in the lab, but to actually then also demonstrate some of the technologies, the systems we built.
A Purdue team began research in April that focuses on how an operator located at the center can perform a remote flight of an uncrewed aircraft. A new $6 million dock at the ports of Indiana Burns Harbor on Lake Michigan is now open. It's the first new dock in 20 years and is part of a $77 million renovation project. The Ports of Indiana CEO says this project will provide global connections for Indiana companies and farmers. 4 Indiana projects are receiving nearly $19 million in funding for hydroelectric improvement projects. Indiana Michigan Power and the Northern Indiana Public Service Company, NIPSCO, are using the money for projects in Elkhart, Mishawaka, and Monticello. The Department of Energy says hydropower accounts for around 1/4 of renewable energy generation in the U.S.
10 dogs, take 1, soft sticks, mark.
A Fisher's Natives film is now complete and screening later this month, set at Butler University. We first told you about filmmaker Vince Dixon earlier this year, who made the film to honor his sister Lauren and start conversations around addiction and substance use disorder. After the film, Community Fairbanks Recovery Center and others will join Dixon for a panel discussion. That free event September 21 at the Schrott Center on the Butler campus. Well, more around Indiana news for you now from Wabash in northern Indiana, where this Hoosier gym in Wabash is on the brink of disappearing. Mary Rachel Redman now with what makes this tiny building in Wabash worth saving.
March 31st, 1880. Wabash, Indiana, at the peak of global innovation. The tiny town of then 2000, beating out Thomas Edison to become the first electrified city in the world. That flash of light symbolic of what was then the height of the Industrial Revolution. Wabash, a maven of manufacturing and recycling. Today, the Sposip & Sons building stands as an enduring symbol of a bygone era.
It was built of native limestone, heavy, solid building, and it was originally built by the Simon Cook family.
Built in 1890, the scrap metal and junkyard business run by the Cook family collected a lot more than just junk.
They bought rags, they bought furs, any metal object that people wanted to get rid of, they would buy.
A lot of the old metals were taken up and made into steel, up in the steel mills towards Gary and Chicago. So a lot of the metal that came in here from all over, they would sort it and process it here and truck it.
Abe Sposip and Sons eventually took over the business in 1924 and would go on to operate out of this very same building for nearly a century before closing its doors in 2018.
You may scare up some cats.
Walking through the front door, like opening a life-size time capsule, chocked full of original machinery and bundled paper trails of the people who came before.
You'll be able to see all the old wood and beams. And then this was an old baler. And then this is an old interior scale that they had also.
These weights, part of the original elevator that was built 134 years ago. Think about that. That's a long time ago.
Just to put it in perspective, Hoosiers weren't driving cars yet, and the telephone, well, that wasn't quite a thing yet either.
These big cardboard bundles are all recycled paper. And oh, the stories they could tell. I'm looking at a former Wabash clothing company from the 1940s. Here's a ledger from a former farmer that lived here in Wabash. Milk, they spent $18.99 total for the year in 1942. History, fascinating.
You don't see any holes in the walls themselves. Anything's possible.
And at a time when it seemingly feels like small-town communities are struggling to survive, Wabash, Indiana is thriving. Their secret?
The Eagles Theater, started out as one of the original vaudeville theaters in Wabash.
Putting historic preservation at the heart of the city's economic development strategy.
So you look at a building like Sposip and Sons, and there's a lot left to be desired. There's definitely good bones to work with, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
But down here in the cultural district, in downtown Wabash, it's amazing.
It is. This is a true testament what revitalization can happen and what it can do to transform a community. Investing in these old buildings is preserving a part of our history and our culture and who we are as a people. This is a great testament that what can be done if you dream big. Downtowns like this are an indicator to investors on how well we take care of our community. These are expensive to take on, these properties. And so this tells you the quality of life and place.
Wabash historian Ron Woodward argues saving pieces of these old buildings also leaves a tangible legacy that people can feel even today, generations later.
Somebody coming in may look at it and see, okay, there's a layer of white paint and it's old brick. To me, that tells a story. See how pink it is? That's brick that was made locally. That connects me to the past. You know, my grandpappy might have been a bricklayer. We like old buildings because we can touch them, we can feel them, we can identify with them. They bring back memories to us.
But efforts to preserve the historic Sposip and Sons building face significant challenges, from structural repairs
In the back corner over here is collapsing.
to a hefty price tag.
Have you had interest?
We've had a few people look at it and trying to get the money.
To renovate it and get it in.
Get it to code?
Yeah.
2 to 3 million. We want to keep our history. We want to keep and repurpose the buildings that we have.
The Sposip building, the sign says it all. Recycling today to preserve tomorrow. That's what you're seeing. By saving that building, we're saving a natural resource building out of limestone. The structure has a really great story to tell. If the Sposip building could speak today, it would say, wow, Wabash, way to dream big, keep dreaming, but don't forget about me. I have a purpose too, don't forget about me. And it could be something grand.
Great story on an important effort in Wabash. Aside from that quaint building in Wabash, there are 9 other historic Hoosier gems on Indiana Landmarks Historic List for 2024. Coming up next, details on something that's happened only 4 times in 70 years at the University of Notre Dame. What it means for the school's rich tradition when we come back.
Time now for our Eye on Education, brought to you by PNC Bank.
Well, we begin this week at Purdue Fort Wayne, where music is in the air. The school broke ground this week on the Surac Sweetwater Music Industry building. It's a $25 million project that will include recording studios, edit suites, an audio lab, and a lot more. The space will be connected to the current campus music center via a sky bridge. It's expected to open in the fall of 2026.
Father Bob, Father Bob.
Reverend Robert Dowd has been inaugurated as the University of Notre Dame's 18th president. There were 2 days of celebrations to mark this historic event, which has only happened 3 times in the university's 182-year history. Before being elected as president, Dowd served in several roles at Notre Dame and as a university alum.
2, 3.
Manchester University has invested $20 million to expand its health science hub. There's now an interprofessional clinic for students and faculty to get hands-on experience, as well as a nursing simulation and skills lab. There are also new collaboration areas for students so they can work together just like they would in a real clinical practice.
We have an aging population that are living longer thanks to medicine and healthier lifestyles. And lifestyle medicine is part of our portfolio, where we're trying to really look at the whole person and help people live longer and have better lives. So, you know, Manchester, I think, is not just trying to answer the call for symptoms, but look at the whole person.
And President Young tells us the school hopes to offer additional programs on the campus in the future. Well, that's all the time we have for this edition of Inside Indiana Business. We leave you this week circling back to the beginning where we started this week, Indiana's growing footprint on the sports scene.